Tomorrow is Super Tuesday, and the Republican candidates have spent the last few days crisscrossing Ohio to bolster support before the polls open. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich spent part of his weekend in the tri-state and joins us now live in D.C. Thanks, first of all, for joining us this morning.
I'm glad to be with you, and we had a great time Saturday in Ohio, and we're delighted to be back, as we have been a number of times recently. I had a great town hall meeting in Cincinnati about 10 days ago, so we're always thrilled to have a chance to be with you.
You have been here and a major presence known. Do you believe that you've made inroads in this state leading up to tomorrow?
Yeah, the polling shows that we've been coming up. I think we're still in third place, but we're much stronger than we were a week ago, and I think a third of the people are still undecided. So we've been emphasizing my American energy plan that would both make us independent from the Middle East so that no future president would ever bow to a Saudi king, and would provide for getting gasoline below $2.50 a gallon, which seems to be pretty attractive to most Ohioans. And we're going to continue to work to communicate why supply and demand works and why it really is possible to get down to $2.50 a gallon or less for gasoline.
Let's talk about that, because this morning the average price here in Cincinnati is $3.76. How exactly are you going to reduce that to $2.50?
Well, there are three immediate steps. First, the president should sign, and I would sign as president, the Keystone Pipeline. That's about 700,000 barrels a day from Canada to Houston, Texas, for refinery. Second, if you open up the Louisiana, Texas part of the Gulf of Mexico, again, that's about 400,000 barrels a day. And if you open up some clearly designated areas in Alaska, that's about 1,200,000 barrels a day. Just those three steps are 2,300,000 barrels of oil a day, which would begin to bring the price down. In addition, I would favor opening up offshore, and I'd favor opening up federal land. We could very easily be the largest oil producer in the world before the end of this decade. That would have a tremendous downward pricing pressure. And we have a proposal for being able to write off all new investments in equipment in 1 year, which is important for all of Ohio manufacturing, but would also be very important in the energy business and allowing us to develop new sources of energy. You know, Ohio has two very different interests in energy. One is you actually, between coal, shale gas, and oil, are going to be one of the major energy suppliers of the country. So that's going to have a positive jobs effect, particularly in eastern Ohio. North Dakota, with its oil discoveries, is now down to 3.5% unemployment, which will be a pretty good deal for virtually any state in the country. And then second, lower cost energy both helps you with the quality of life for individuals, but it also helps manufacturing by lowering the cost of making things in the U.S., and that helps us compete with China and India and other competitors.
You mentioned the poll numbers a few minutes ago. There's new ones out this morning that basically show Romney and Santorum in a dead heat, statistically anyway. And you're right, your numbers have improved, but so many are undecided. If you gain this nomination, the presidential nomination, how can you kind of rally Ohio around you, considering how many right now are supporting other candidates?
Well, I think, first of all, that when you get down to the general election and the choice is Barack Obama, who has favored giant tax increases, favored very expensive gasoline, favored huge deficits in Washington, favored an environmental protection agency that would put much of Ohio out of business. I think the choice will be very vivid, and I think we'll actually do very well in Ohio. I think people in Ohio want a government that helps create jobs, doesn't kill it. They want a government that helps lower the cost of gasoline, doesn't raise it. And they want a government that lives within its means so that it's balancing its budget, which I did for 4 years in a row. And I think having had a background of having helped balance the budget 4 years in a row has been an enormous asset.
As far as Super Tuesday itself, you've said many times that nothing will change. You are going to continue your campaign till the bitter end. Can anything happen tomorrow that might change your mind at this point?
Well, I don't know that it's a bitter end. I think, you know, tomorrow the largest state in delegates is Georgia, my home state. I'm now ahead in Georgia by such a big margin. I'll probably have 4 or 5 times the size of the margin that Governor Romney had in Michigan. So I feel pretty good coming out of Georgia. I think we're going to do pretty well in Tennessee and in Oklahoma. Now, we may do surprisingly well. As you pointed out, a third of the voters are still really undecided in Ohio, and I think the appeal of a $2.50 gas tax, gasoline price, is a pretty big appeal. I think the appeal of positive ideas is a pretty big appeal. So I feel pretty good about having communicated well, and I think that the possibilities are very good that we're going to go on to win Alabama and Mississippi next week, and potentially also Kansas. And so I think this is still a race that's very wide open.
What happens, though, if you get to the convention, if you all get to the convention, and no one has that requisite number of delegates? What would you do at that point?
I think we would be inclined to work with the people who actually had the courage to run. Santorum and Romney and I were all three in Ohio on Saturday, and we're chatting about the fact that I don't think somebody's going to come in from the outside and be a magician. If you haven't had the willingness to get on the ballot, to go through the vetting process, to be criticized, to survive the attacks, I mean, if you aren't learning how to do this at a national level, I think the idea of coming in at the last possible minute is very, very unlikely. So I think one of the four of us is likely to end up being the nominee.
It's interesting to those of us on the outside to imagine the three of you with the vicious personal attacks that we have heard sitting around talking about this in Wilmington on Saturday. It's hard to believe that you guys get along.
No,
is that the case behind the scenes?
Look, we were actually standing. So we happened to be standing there. We were all there. We all were there at the same time for Governor Huckabee's forum on jobs, which is why. And we had a minute or two. I think you have to be adults. I mean, this is a very tough business, and I think all of us have some complaints about each other, and I certainly think that Governor Romney's ads in particular have been not only negative but also at times not truthful. But having said all that, you have to have some sense of responsibility that's bigger than yourself. I spent 4 years negotiating with Bill Clinton. He was a liberal Democrat. I was a conservative Republican. We had to somehow get beyond that. We had some very tough fights, but at the same time we understood that we had an obligation to the United States of America that was bigger than whatever our personal feelings were. And I think you have to have the same thing here. In the end, the four of us are going to be on the same team to defeat Barack Obama. It has to work that way. I think the re-election of Obama would be such a disaster for this country that we have to have a commitment that we're going to get together no matter what.
Mr. Gingrich, thank you. We will see beginning tomorrow on Super Tuesday. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And of course, we want to thank also the Gingrich campaign for the satellite time for this interview.
Thank you.